Always a pleasure
Thank
seeing you.
you.
And Nurith,
It's
I haven't
always a
seen.
pleasure.
Nurith, we're meeting for the first time. Hi, Nurith.
Hello,
Yeah,
good to be here.
hello, how are you? It's nice to meet you.
Look, Nurith is in New Zealand, and New Zealand always gets lost out because my shows are always in the evening. Of course, some of them I do in the morning, like this one. So, Nurith, I'm sorry about that, but you people have to join in. We'll fix a time that's convenient for you. But we need.
That's the price to pay to live in paradise.
No, we'll get you in. We'll get paradise into our show. We need paradise, but we only want paradise if we see paradise. We want to see
Yeah.
the outside. We want to see your nice Auckland. You're in Auckland, is it?
Yep, I'm in Auckland. Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do right now is Tina is, of course, doing this qualities of a good mediator. And Tina, the thing is, I tell everyone to tell me about the conference. Whenever I tell them that, they start on the topic. So don't start on the topic. Tell us about the conference and about yourself later. First, the conference.
For me, the conference is a wonderful opportunity for everyone to learn from the experts in the field. You challenged me yesterday as we were chatting at the wee hours of morning my time. I don't know where you get your energy from. I already asked you what tea you're drinking. I'm definitely going to buy it. But I love that you are so generous in sharing your wealth of information, providing a platform for mediators, for conflict resolution practitioners to meet, have a discussion. You make it fun, entertainment. So we're learning, able to get a perspective from our colleagues in the field while having some entertainment, which I appreciate so much because that makes it a real pleasant experience. So I have fun every time I'm here with you and guests, just learning, chatting.
Nice.
Going off track and going back on track and figuring out whatever it is.
Look, that's the tea. Tina, that's the tea. I won't overdo you and I won't overdo me on the tea. This is what keeps me going. All the nice words.
Yes, and you love it.
Yeah.
I know you love it. So yes, I was quite I was enjoying doing this search for GPT chat. And it was so fascinating because I tried it and then I went back to you with the response. And then we were like, okay, like, do it this way, Tina. And I'm like, here, ask it this specific way. And then it comes back with more information. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I never know what I'm going to learn. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, let me brief Nurith on it. Yeah, Nurith, basically, Tina and I were having a conversation, and I was telling her that we have Chat GPT, which I am now, for us, I'm calling it Mediator GPT. If you deal with it properly, it actually takes you through the process quite well. And for me, the thing is, obviously, I don't know how many shows of mine you've watched, but I always keep saying mediators are not made in 40-hour factories. But now I've been saying if you can program them in 40 hours, the Chat GPT has been programmed with much more content, much content. It's got billions of pages out there. So if we have to have those programmed mediators, let's rather have artificial intelligence out there. And the ones with the human touch, that humanistic approach, we'll keep it for the humans, which you won't find so many of. So at least there is access to something for people who don't have access to anything. Because we take it for granted that people have reasonable conversations. They don't. So now they have something right in their house which they can start a conversation with. So, but of course you have to give it the right prompts and take it through the process. So it was nice. Of course, Tina was late at night for her, and I'm pushing her through understand Chat GPT at that time.
Like, oh my gosh, And he gave me this challenge. Of course, I was like holding one eye up, like, oh my gosh, let me Google this and let's try to see if we can make it work. But it's fascinating that we have this technology, and I think that used wisely, it's going to really change and impact the field in a most dynamic and inclusive way, because you're thinking about not everyone can afford to go to school and learn everything. It's an opportunity for any and everybody to learn. And I just love it. I think that's fascinating. And of course, now that you've been giving me some tips on how to ask the questions, I'm going to be using it more just to find out what's out there to challenge my own thinking. And I like to be challenged.
But I did remember also, Tina, that every response that you give it, it's learning from that. So everyone who's using it and actually puts in or whatever content is something which is, of course, real. We were taking it through a very, I mean, just a general role play kind of thing. But as it goes on and people have conversations with it, it will learn much more. And of course, it's picking up content all the time. New things are coming out. I always feel that, I don't know, we have to check whether ChatGPT has access to the transcripts of all these videos that are out there. So it's learning from everything out there. So I think that it takes it. And look, it's connected to your session also. Qualities of a good mediator, when you say that, then in that case, what all does ChatGPT fit into? Let's look at that. What it doesn't fit into is where the human touch is required. And wherever we feel it doesn't fit into it, can we provide it certain information, what we need to provide? Because there was one session on, is it time for a mediation database? So if it gets real content, if mediators are willing to put things out, and over time, certain mediations, can you have them in camera? Can you have audio? Can you have, I mean, maybe tomorrow, maybe iris scans, maybe brain scans at the same time. There's so much learning that machines can do. But I won't take time on that. You know that I don't get me started. It's kind so, Tina, qualities of a good mediator after you tell us about yourself.
Well, first, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present on this. It was this article came across, and I thought it's actually from Mediate.com, and it's the article on from program on negotiation, Harvard Law School, and by the Pond staff. So I thought it was interesting when you start thinking about qualities of a good mediator. I was thinking, just asking about abrasiveness with this question mark. And I thought about what is that? It indicates that qualities of a good mediator aren't limited to the warm and welcoming qualities, but sometimes maybe a mediator needs to be harsh. So I was thinking about, in terms of some of the colleagues in the field who are exceptionally successful, is there a need for the mediator to be less warm? Do they need the mediator? I'm thinking in terms of, when they say harsh, maybe more direct. And I was trying to think of what is the word you're looking for. And I was thinking about just like you get representation, when we get representation from an attorney, if they were in a legal situation where they had a case, they were looking at a case or potentially having to sue someone, you do want to seek expert counsel to try to make sure your needs and your interests are represented. But I was thinking in terms, when you try to go to mediation, is this a question of whether or not you want to go to a mediator that's an expert in, say, for insurance, if you're trying to sue for damages? Do you want that mediator to have an extensive background in insurance, or could someone mediate that doesn't have that type of experience? for which they can maybe perhaps provide more in-depth or more structured way of looking at a problem, because they know they maybe could do a case analysis and let you know what you would be looking at in terms of the probability of you winning a case, negotiating a claim, a suit. And in that context, if you do know how to do a case analysis and aren't necessarily a lawyer, and you are competent in that area, would that be suffice? Or are they saying that you really need to be really more abrasive and rough and more authoritative in the process, a more directive role? So it's looking at that thinking, it's important to me to be the best mediator I can be to provide the services, because my goal is, at heart, is to help people. I know what it's like to be in conflict. And so I find empathy to be, or I've found it to be very important because most of the times when someone's coming to you, you're coming to you when they're at their worst, like they're in the absolute worst thing has happened to them. And we don't know how long they've been dealing with that conflict, trying to manage it, trying to see a way out when they may feel trapped. So I could see that empathy would be very important in building trust. So if someone comes to you, they're probably in a very difficult place in their life. So empathy, I find, is an important piece in building trust. But then I'm looking at this article and I'm thinking that, do I need to bring more in terms of, do they need something else? I don't know, like a pre-mediation where they can take a look at what it is that they need in terms of contacting experts, being well informed, because the last thing you would want to happen is someone making a decision or going into an agreement without having resourced everyone, every expert necessary for them to be educated and informed, because you're in an emotional state. You're not exactly in your thinking brain when you're dealing with tragedy or some type of wrong that's been done to you, because you're in an emotional state. So I'm just curious in terms of, do I need to be a harsher mediator, or do I need to be a more competent, more well-rounded in terms of having the ability to provide a case analysis, for instance? I think it's important that the parties seek whatever expert opinion, whoever they need to be able to go to so that they can be well informed. That's a piece for self-determination. So if you want to help provide space for empowerment, self-determination, part of that is so that the parties feel they have the absolute right, or they have their own, they're empowered to call and resource whoever they need to resource, so that they can make an informed decision. And so I'm just curious when I'm looking at, which I think is a great article, in terms of, they've even done research on this and found that some in their research that there seemed to be a preference for the mediator to be more I would say very direct. Have this a more of a, instead of being not an appeasing, more direct, maybe more confident in how they are presenting themselves. I wonder what is it that the groups that they took a look at in this study. And this study I'm looking at, it was some research, conducted with some colleagues. They reference Ting Zhang of Columbia University and Michael I. Norton Business School, Harvard Business School. But what it suggests is that it doesn't sound like it's enough to just be a nice mediator. There needs to be more. And I very much believe in self-determination. So what else does the nice mediator have to be not so nice? Can you be nice and competent at the same time? Like for me, which I'm looking more into case analysis, because I need to understand, I feel I need to expand my knowledge base. But while I'm looking at providing space for self-determination in that process, I want to make sure that whomever I'm trying to help understands that they have self-determination. So if they aren't ready to sign an agreement, that they know that they don't have to. They can seek out expert opinion. They can talk to whoever they go to when they need a sounding board. So I'm curious, what do you think about, is it okay to just be a nice mediator? You need to bring more to the table.
Want us to
Because
come in?
that's what I'm interpreting.
Are you asking us, or you're asking us? Are you, because we'll also come in. I'm Nurit, or you can also come in. But let me tell you one thing. For me, people with the mediator mindset are not nice. At least I'm not a nice person. Let me tell you very clearly.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what I am and what you are also. You're a kind person. And this is the difference we need to put out there, because nice doesn't work. So have a look at it.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, look at each of them and ask yourself which side you fall. If you fall on the nice side, it's a problem.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I think that is, I also feel like in terms of mediating the peace on negotiation, because I'm a facilitative mediator, that perhaps more training, which I'm doing now, needs to be focused on being very good in the steps for mediation. You need to be a good negotiator as well. So I'm just curious. It's not enough to be a nice mediator. You can be
Are you looking at the screen? Tina, you're looking at the screen?
Yes,
And you got, okay, perfect. So
So
tell me
you're
what
looking
works.
at what works. I think being genuine is very, very important, because I can tell right away if you're not. I think for me, that's coming in good faith, sitting at, having taken a seat at the table in good faith. Fakeness, disingenuousness, right off the bat, that is going to completely break down any hope of getting people to start talking, because trust has already been broken more than likely, else you wouldn't be here. Something's happened. So the coming in good faith is something I ask parties to do.
And this also from the mediator's perspective, also from the mediator's perspective. Of course, for the participants, yes, from the mediator's perspective also. Yeah.
Yeah. So look at kind people, nice people. I love this graphic. Thank you.
Yeah.
you don't change how they act depending on who is watching. So again, and I gave you the one example of a case that I had where I was not an expert in what this case was about. But before I started, I made it very clear how this process was going to go. I made it very clear, explained what mediation was, explained to them everything they needed to know. And it was very upfront to let them know, I do not know anything about this particular area, but one thing I can promise you is I'm going to listen and I'm going to make every effort to understand so that I can, because I'm here to help you. Now, they had a few minutes to think about it, and they were like, well, what do we have to lose? So we sat down, and I made sure I was at the head of the table like an anchor, because there was several people party to this complaint. This case had multiple cross complaints. And I was like, I remember thinking, for one thing, the parties were very tall. And I thought, oh my gosh, as they towered over me, I was like, kind of taken back a tad. But then I realized it was even more important to position myself at the head of the table so that I could not only be their anchor, but also I would have a level of, I could get a level of respect and give respect, but also they needed to have someone to guide them to the process because they were both conflicting parties. So as I'm going to lead this process, I need to make sure they know to come, that I'm there to help them both equally. So in any case, I went back and forth, understanding what was fleshed out was basically you cannot, people try to, change how your belief system, your values. You can't negotiate values. You can negotiate behavior, but values, that's something that's part of your identity, that's instilled in you. So I focused more on the behavior, and they were able to talk more freely. Mine is we weaponize our words a lot, but at the end of the day, what happened was a violation of what their values were, and that was triggering. So we had to look at the behavior that you can work with, but your word, for some people, their word is their bond, and a handshake means something to some people. So that is, as I was working with them, I was learning, okay, I see that the communication started to break down when that moment they felt disrespected and someone didn't keep their word, because that's something that's important. My mentor said mediation is a conversation with a purpose. And when I was speaking with, on this particular case, the one thing that was very clear to me is that one, feeling heard was so important to them, because whatever had happened transpired in that moment when people started filing all these complaints, because no one was listening. No one. They were just yelling, screaming, and in such a terrible position that would impact them financially, devastatingly so. So there's a book which we all know, and appreciate getting to yes, Roger Fisher and William Ury on negotiation. And there's a piece I keep reminding myself of. Matter of fact, I'm going to reread that book again. To separate people from the problem and focus on the interest, and to find common ground, some objectivity, and just thinking in a deeper level. Everything's very surface, but once you start to break down the problem, and they can get at the heart of what's really going on, then I think you have the communication is hold on 1 second. This is, hold on 1 second.
But Nurit, please, your comments. You have to come in.
Sorry about that.
Nurit, now you know. Now you took the break.
Apologize for
Now we're giving Nurit an opportunity to put in her comments. Yes, Nurit.
But you know,
No, Nurit, like... Tina, Nurit is giving her comment on it because you gave us a little break. So yeah, Nurit, something. It's a discussion. Everyone's a panelist. So Nurit, anything to say? Wait, she's saying something. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
You know, it's hard to put a finger on exactly what it is. And obviously it's a combination of things that make us good mediators sometimes. And this changes from person to person. But what I find, and I don't know how to call it exactly, but it's being very observant and knowing to put your finger on what it is that's the key in each case, because people come and they start saying things, but the things they're saying on the surface are more often than not the, you know, there's a sentence in our industry that's called, the issue is not the issue. So they might come and say, you know, they want to talk about the kids, the hours, the times, that's not the issue. There is an issue, and until we touch that issue, it will not be resolved. They'll continue fighting, whether it's, you know, Tuesday afternoon is mine or Sunday afternoon is yours, because that's not the issue. There is something underneath that caused this conflict, something in their emotional, you know, I'm talking about family because that's what I do most. So there's some kind of wound, there's some kind of hurt, there's some kind of a grudge, that's something there. So what I find is that when I can, you know, sometimes there's a word that comes out or something and you realize, that's what it is. And then you start asking questions about that. And that, you know, you start going deep into that. And once that comes out, put on the table, discussed, even if it's not, you know, resolved necessarily, but it's sort of, once it's out there, the rest will be fine. The rest will be resolved. Because, you know, it's enough that somebody says, you know, you have been, what you've done to me, like, you know, in this break has just been terrible. You've ruined my life. You know, whatever they say, it's out there. And that's it. So it's this really being able to find, one of my mediation teachers used to call it the golden thread. Like in all that, you know, pile of garbage, let's call it, that people bring in, there's a golden thread somewhere. And if you manage to pull out this golden thread, then you solved it. Otherwise, you might come out with an agreement. It's probably not going to last, you know, more than a few months, and things are going to go bad again. But so, yeah, that's my 2 cents about what it is that we do. And, you know, we don't always find it. But when we find it, I think it's real gold.
I think maybe you reach that point when you look at that as a unique situation. This is not anything that's happened before. This is unique. So I'm looking at it from a blank slate concept, not putting my experience with that person that happened, that, oh, this is also the similar thing. Everyone is unique. The situation is unique. And when you go with that kind of attitude, I think the golden thread might be easier to find, because it'd be a blank slate. A golden thread might stand out. But if you've put the garbage into it, finding that they're garbage, yes, but you yourself get all that you've gone through, seen with other people. My 2 cents. Yes, Tina, 4 cents you've got. Now give us your $1.
Well, you know, I think what I hadn't realized, we had a conversation about this maybe last time. I realized in the moment of that feeling in very small, like the tiniest mediator ever, and these tall individuals came in and they were just so angry that I was feeling vulnerable. And so that's why I took the seat at the table when I was thinking about how best to balance this seating arrangement, which seems like it wouldn't be so important. And but it really is. And I realized that I had to have a seat at the head of the table in order to try to really connect the parties, because right now they were in such a terrible and frustrating position of looking at multiple charges. So I think there is this thread that we always have to remember to connect, to be a connection. I believe that empathy has to be there, genuineness has to be there. And in this case, my vulnerability of not having the knowledge of their particular livelihood, the opportunity provided space to talk about what it's like to do that work, to get up really early in the morning and rely on each other to be able to put food on the table. It's literally like everyone has to do their part. And my vulnerability ended up empowering them to honor the process, because it's their process. They need to work through it. I'm there to help, but I recognize my own vulnerability as, in this particular case, it was helpful. It's almost like the dumb mediator people laugh at all the time. But what I noticed with some people, when they are engaged in being angry at the other person, once they realize that someone needs their help, and I've seen this in some cases, like one time I've had a case that came in anyway, I was under the weather, really under weather and losing my voice. Instead of them bickering back and forth, which is what they had been doing all this time, they decided to work together to help me to make sure that I was, since I had came in to help them, they were helping to, well, literally mirror at some points, reflect what it was saying, making sure they were talking back and forth. The next thing I knew, they were, actually working together. And I thought, this is very interesting. That doesn't mean I don't believe that there is room for mediators that are more experts in particular scenarios, in particular high dollar cases. But it just made me question a bit about the fact that the people we try to help also may inadvertently help us as well, and start to work together because something's bigger than the problem they have an opportunity to do something good, which is to help their mediator in this case. And they literally were working together to help resolve their case, but also recognize that they could work together to get something resolved. So I thought it was very interesting, and I'm sure it doesn't happen often, but there is a level of vulnerability for, I would think, anyone who goes in to seek mediation services. I certainly have done that before, and I remember feeling very, very vulnerable and scared. I think there's something within that vulnerability that maybe we could look at a little bit more. And what about the mediator if they're vulnerable? If you're vulnerable as a mediator, is that something that's okay? Are there advantages to that? And if we've heard the role of dumb mediator, whereas whenever this happened, I've seen the parties step up and work together towards resolving their own conflict. I just find it interesting, the idea that you have to be an expert. Well, very often the party to the transaction is an expert. It's just that whatever happened in that transaction, either they made a mistake or the other party is not informed how that whatever work that needed to be done, they don't understand all the steps that are involved. And because of that lack of understanding, that may cause conflict. If you're expecting things to be done a certain way and that doesn't happen, that causes conflict because you're not educated. You're not educated on the process for the service you're seeking. So I'm just kind of curious. I think it's a great article, but it left me asking questions and wondering and thinking like, this is interesting. Because I always think that we do need to have some empathy, but we also need to be I think we need to be more direct. And I think that could be balanced. And you already mentioned earlier, Vikram, that your approach to mediation, it sounds like a very direct, no nonsense type of presentation in the room. How you present yourself is a very direct mediator. And so the question is that more effective than a mediator, than someone who is focused on being a nice mediator?
Which is why Tina was taking you through that difference, although that's put up for kids actually. The kids are taught that, but I was putting it out there only because I feel, look, everyone has their view, because a lot of people feel that you have to be nice and that niceness will take you through and things like that. And of course, why I put that up, I think all of those points are actually really important. The second one you missed out when you were looking at, this is the one about the fact that you wants to be nice for whatever reason and acts nice was expected of them by adults. I'm saying adults, just put participants instead of adults. I want to be kind because it feels good to be kind. So this is where that feeling between and showing, which is where, again, let me go back to that artificial intelligence. In terms of showing, it will be good at showing. About the feeling, we don't know whether it can feel or not. Maybe sometime we'll find out it feels also. But at this moment of time, we'll think that it doesn't feel. So wherever feeling is required and that feeling helps in the process, yes, you need that person. If you need the nice one who has to show because he has to show, you have that available today. So, yeah.
Well, I usually, I think having empathy, compassion, but I think that competency in the area for which you're mediating, there are advantages. But even if you aren't an expert in the specific type of case you're mediating, I think that the level of confidence, the level of authority that you bring to the table, there's something that may actually build trust, may help in building trust and confidence in the process. So as I was looking at this article, I'm wondering if some of that is, once you get a reputation for, and actually, let me tell you what I had came up with. I am, of course, from Delaware. So I was reminded of a point phrase that President Biden uses. I call him Uncle Joe. I'm very fond of him from Delaware. He says this phrase when he says, straight from the shoulder, when speaking to someone. And he uses it quite often if you ever get a chance to watch him. And and he's always spoke very, very straight and plain talking in terms of making sure that when he tells you something, that gives me the impression that he's going to not sugarcoat it. Like, he's going to tell it like it is. This is the situation. And whenever I hear, or when I was looking at this article, that's who came to mind. I thought, okay, if you shoot straight from the shoulder, that is a way of being very direct and letting people know that you're going to tell them exactly what they need to know. And that's be the good, the bad, whatever. But you're going to at least get a direct response, a direct statement, and tell it like it is.
The only thing is that, Tina, because of course Nurit doesn't know the article that you're talking about abrasiveness. I'm saying it doesn't have to come out that way. I'm not saying that you have to put it across in that manner. You can put it across, but the point is you must put it across. When, how, it all depends on you. That's your gauge of the situation and the people. So definitely that matters. But if you don't put it across, thinking that you want to be nice, it's not good for the process. So the other side, you're saying that in terms of the knowledge of what's happening, that not domain expertise, but okay, maybe in terms of the grasp on the subject, maybe I don't think that's important, as long as you can grasp what's happening there and you can ask the right questions and dig a little deeper and go there, because the process expertise, I think, is something which I always said was more important. Domain expertise can always be picked up, and how much to be picked up is what needs to be seen. You don't have to become that expert, because then goes against the process because then you are going to start looking at it from the different angle. So of course, we haven't got Nurit in. She's always she's thinking of saying something. Nurit, I'm sure you have some comment to make. And if you on the abrasiveness. Her article was on the abrasiveness. That I cut out that from a topic. I said let's keep it a little more general. Whether that was good or bad, I don't know, but I did that. I said.
So but I think considering how much stress that you're under if you're party to a case, I could see a party really needing a very direct approach, as opposed to, because you're in a serious situation. You may be looking at, I don't know, jail time. You may be looking at losing a significant part of your company. You may be looking at losing your job. You don't know what that person's been going through. So that's why I agree with you in terms of the directness is important. Just to even build trust. And but I don't want to do so and to be devoid of having compassion and balance it out. So I'm looking at it in terms of more being very balanced and being there for whatever it is that the parties need, so that they can feel confident that I'm going to do my very best.
But I think, yeah, Tina, that really actually comes from trust. It basically comes from trust. And if the trust is there, then they know you're coming from a good place. I think that helps in the process, which again is important. But sometimes, whether today's scenario, are you picking up people you trust, or you are given people because the process is done in spaces like courts where maybe you don't have that time to build that trust. But we have to get Nurit in. I'm sure she has a comment to make and she's waiting to say it, but Tina doesn't let her come in. Yes, Nurit.
We was just just talking about this, and just something I was thinking about, and so it's always great to get the feedback. And
where is the time? You're not giving us the time to feedback. Yes.
What I see around me, when I see other mediators, is that I see all these different variations that you mentioned. Some are like that, some are like that. There's some good mediators who are really direct and even tell people what to do. And they're still good mediators, in their own, they're very, often people love coming to them and get they just want to sort it out and they get something. There's other mediators who are really, really sort of gentle, very sort of non-interventionist, and they all, in a way work. So it's not about either this or this. You have your own style, obviously. And Vikram has his own style that could be a bit different, and I have my own style.
Yes.
And the one thing I noticed that when I studied mediation, I'm a forever learner. I just study. Wherever I see another course, I go in there. But what I discovered is that just like mediation is a bit like cooking, like following a recipe. So you get a recipe, you go to a mediation course, you go to a training course, you learn with this one and this one and this one, and each one gives you a recipe. At the end of the day, I love cooking, but I never follow a recipe. I take the general idea from a recipe, and I always bring my own thing, and I put a little bit more of that. I keep that out. I don't actually like putting that, even though if it's in the recipe. And so I think we find our way, and I also think we suit ourselves to the people. You're not the same with every set of parties that you're with. You're completely different, I'm guessing. And that's the beauty of it, that's what I love about mediation. It's so flexible. It's so, you can't come in with a set, I like planning things in advance, and I always sit and I write things before every mediation I go to. I write my own. But I find that I follow maybe, 20% of what I've written and prepared and all that, because you go with where they take you. And so I think your curiosity, wondering about this comes from the right place, because you know that even yourself are not the same in two mediations that you do. And
I think the important thing is to be yourself. Just be yourself. If you are yourself, you can't be everyone to everyone. So whoever you can be, whoever wants, I think that's the best thing. Like you said, every person is different. How they react to that person is different. So if you are going to at all points of time want to adapt, sometimes you won't find yourself, and because if you not find yourself, they won't be able to connect with that, because you're not being your authentic self. So I think I think we should have had another topic on this. is every mediator good for everyone? Something like that.
Now that's the question.
Yeah.
I just think meeting people where I try to meet people where they are at, and that seems to work very well. And I build upon that, but I think building trust, if you don't have trust, you really don't have, there's nothing you can really do to be effective in helping them solve their own problem or challenge or conflict. You just have to meet people where they are. And I think that's important as well, in a genuine way. I just thought it was an interesting question. You know, I appreciate the challenges of Vikram will give me a challenge. And I just think I look forward to, you know, learning more from you. And I really appreciate, you know, his sharing and, you know, providing insight in this question I had about this great article, which I just thought, I just want to kind of explore it a little bit. You know, so it's been great. I look forward to, are you coming up next, Nareed, or?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I do have some coffee.
It's not too late for you. You tell us, Tina,
It
what
is
time it
late.
is. Tell us what time it is.
Oh my God. It's 1:55 in the morning.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Tina,
it
feel
is.
free to go to sleep.
That's the passion she has. She cannot sleep. She's finding out
It's
from
true.
me.
Yes, Vikram had me. What was it? 3 o'clock. I was like, oh no, now I have to. Why did he have to bring this up? Now I have to investigate this problem. And I was like holding one eye up. I was like, oh my gosh, let me just type it in and see what I can find out, because I'm just naturally curious and I love learning. So I was like, no, but I appreciate both of your time, and I'll hang out here, and I just want to listen to what you have to share, Nareed. And I appreciate your contributing to this conversation as well.
Thank you very
Very
much,
Thank
Tina.
you for sharing.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
always
I'll
good.
put myself on mute.
But
Mhm.
look, we have 2-3 minutes before Nurit's session starts. So what I was wanting to do was put up what the problem that Tina put up to ChatGPT, and then yeah, we're just putting it up just to go through it. Of course, look, Tina, it can still be more. I mean, you can go more in depth, because this was not, it was just something you came up with. But when there's a real issue, you are putting out things in a different manner. But let's put it out for Nurit what that conversation with ChatGPT was. So this was what it was. Okay. Tell me how slow to go up, how fast to go up. Whatever you see in italics is what ChatGPT has said.
Yes, and what's fascinating when you think in terms of pre-mediation, or if you have a potential case, literally you could use ChatGPT to ask to present a scenario like this, and it literally came up with these logical responses, and I was like, oh wow, this is really getting interesting.
Yeah.
As you help me with the way to ask the question.
So this is today what they're saying is that how to give prompts to GPT, ChatGPT is now becoming a specialization. They're saying that is where everything will lie. And that by itself, now everyone falls into that training. Now trainings are happening on ChatGPT prompts.
I still would always follow up with, in terms of just doing some quality control. And I think what I love is the options that it generates, but I would still want to do my due diligence in terms,
It's just a look, it's just a
you know,
starting point. We have to look at it from the fact that people don't have
Yeah.
even an option to go somewhere and they might not go somewhere. So
That's
if they have
correct.
something to take them, look, this is just a thought. Look, finally, I keep saying this is artificial intelligence, which is giving you something. You still have to have human intelligence. No, you're not going
Absolutely.
blindly. You instead, I mean, it's like
Mhm.
everything that you see on social
Yes.
media. You don't start looking at as the gospel truth. You're supposed to use your mind, but at least there is
Mhm.
something that's thrown up which is better than nothing, and you have access to it sitting in your house. Everyone has access to it. So you have 8 billion people having access to something. How, I mean, in terms of scale, does it get any better? So, you know, have you read it?
It's fascinating.
Not,
I
not
love it.
everywhere, but I think it's very impressive.
Yeah,
And
it
what we
is.
what we do is, if we have time at the end of your session, we'll do an actual situation that you come up with, and you see how it works real time. This all happens real time. It happens in seconds.
Oh my.
It's
It
generating all
did.
that. And
It really,
and
yeah.
more involved that issue, that because it comes, look, this was something she just put up there and I took it from there and I modified it because she
Mhm.
just left it at that stage. She didn't, because how she put it across, ChatGPT told her what to do. You should do it like that, you should do it like that. But if you give it the role to play, it actually generates things. So this was simple. It can get more complex and more complex. It doesn't matter to it. So today what the problem is, you think, no, I'm talking to a machine. Don't look at it that way. Just talking to, I keep saying, please tell me this. I always talk to it as someone that you are asking as a person. Just put it across that way. It'll also learn that yes, people can be nice to it also. So we'll try that, Nurit, later in your session. So what we have to do is we have to conclude your Tina's session at this point of time. Tina, thank you very much. Always a pleasure seeing you. Please join other sessions. Not too many left now, but last day, closing session, please drop in.